Computer. And hello, everybody. I am joined by three of the best in the North Bay when it comes to talking high school sports. And high school football season is back. We are joined by my friend Vincent Diadamo, Dave Cox of YSN 365, and Daniel Poulter, freelance for the Napa Valley Register, also writes for Cal High Sports. Gentlemen, how's it going?
Very good. Thank you very much.
Looking forward to getting the season started.
Not too bad, not too bad.
So before we kind of get into games and stuff, what I want to kind of talk about is how is it what are your guys' feelings about having high school football back in its normal time frame after last year's spring kind of weird season? For me, it feels very nice to have it back in its normal time of year.
Yeah, it's great for me. I mean, my business kind of revolves around the sports community and what's going on. It was nice to have this stuff going on in the spring, but it was a little bit hectic to have all those different games going on all at once, and it really kept me on my toes. So I'm looking forward to a more normalized season and a full season as well, with a regular schedule and, you know, a lot of the matchups. And, you know, I feel for the kids who didn't get a full season, especially the seniors last year. So the juniors that are now seniors this year, I think, are really going to appreciate the opportunity to have a full football season.
Yeah, for me, I kind of liked March, strangely. Like, it's gonna be really nice to have the nights again, but I don't know what it was about those days. Maybe it was like the sunlight for like photographers and things, where I was just like, I'm kind of okay with this, but like I think that first Friday night game, like in the fall, I'll be like, okay, this feels really good.
Vince?
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I think high school football was meant to be in the fall. I mean, call me a traditionalist. I know we kind of all like to wax poetic, so to speak, but I mean, as far as the spring, I mean, it was definitely better than nothing. It was more than we thought we were going to have. But I'll tell you where it really felt strange, not just from a writer standpoint, but like all these years that I've covered high school football. It's you cover high school football on Friday, and then you get up in the morning and you get ready to watch college football. That part of it kind of did feel strange to me, but nonetheless, though, I'm looking forward to August 27th, that is.
So the next logical thing with getting a normal season back would be probably the best thing of it all is that for the first time in a few years, we have playoffs back. Like that is the best thing. There will be a state champion decided at the end of the season. I would assume that is something that we're all looking forward to. Section playoffs, state playoffs, you know, the CI bowl games, all that stuff. What does it mean for you guys to have that back as well?
I'd say especially when it comes to just like actually figuring out concrete, it's a lot easier to figure out who's who, where like last year, a lot of the times it's like trying to, especially from a statewide perspective, it's like we think these guys are better, but do we really know? Like, especially for some of those divisions, like in the D2, D3 range, like, yeah, Bosco and Mater Dei, yeah, they're the DLSL, they're the cream of the crop type teams. But like when you're trying to figure out like a Cardinal Newman compared to like a Central Catholic, like where do these all kind of fall in? This year we should be able to figure out that again.
Dave?
Yeah, playoffs are great. I mean, that's what the players play for. That's what the season's all about. But you know, I think what we had last year was certainly, you know, something. It was better than nothing for sure. And you know, I think you know, the playoff system and everything. The kids that got deprived of that, you know, that was a bummer. You know, I mean, if you're a senior and your team's good enough to win a state championship or at least a section title, and you don't even get a chance to compete for that, that's a letdown. But at least they got to play 5 or 6 games last year. So it's going to be great. I think everybody's, you know, I think the fans are going to appreciate it, you know, depending on where we're at with COVID. I think the players, there's going to be a lot of enthusiasm. And I think the playoff system should be great this year.
We have Vince Diadamo.
Hello, fellas.
Vince, okay.
Okay, hello, fellas.
Talk
I
to
had
us.
to improvise.
Yes.
I got Well, the pass rush was coming, so I got flushed out of the pocket, but I'm here for you.
But I'm going to put you on the spot. What's it like? What does it mean to you to have a section in state playoffs back?
Well, honestly, I tell you, Kyle, it absolutely couldn't be better because, to David's point and Daniel's point, I mean, it was obviously better than nothing, but just more than anything, it represents a sense of normalcy. And also, most of all, you can find out exactly how good teams are because, obviously you and I saw a lot of the vintage crushers here in the Napa Valley. We know vintage is good. It was just hard to ascertain how good. Whereas now, getting to play a full slate of games, league, non-league, and playoffs. Now, and this problem isn't just limited to vintage. You could say this for pretty much every team that played in a section playoffs last year. Now we get to find out exactly how good they are.
That is true. So speaking of that, I've been out to a few practices. I've been out to practices here in Napa. Daniel, I know you've been out to a practice or two. Dave, I'm not sure about you, and Vince, I know you haven't, but I've noticed that these coaches are attacking this turnaround. It's been a little bit different. It honestly has. So what should we expect from teams after the short turnaround? Like, is it going to be something where, the football talent should be the level of play should be up? Like, because last year when right out of bed, we saw that, there wasn't much offense. If we're going to be perfectly honest, it was more of a defensive battle. So what do you guys think we should expect with a somewhat normal off season? It hasn't been normal. And then heading into a non-league part of the schedule.
I'd say, especially from what I've seen, what's going to be really interesting for me is just what's the overall talent level. If we're just talking about like the North Bay overhaul, I think a lot of teams lost a lot of kids, like just to graduation, not just numbers wise, but I think that these groups of seniors, these juniors, they're going to be a lot more bonded together. So I think they're going to be ahead of the curve of where they normally would be. But is there a Brock Bowers walking through this door? I don't think any of these schools have, if I'd probably say there's maybe 3 or 4 D1 kids in the entire area. I think it's going to be the overall talent's going to be lower, but I think them as a group will be better.
Interesting. Vince, Dave?
I think there's going to be a lot of enthusiasm, which will make up for probably the lack of reps and like Daniel said, the fact that there's going to be a lot of kids that, haven't played a lot of football out there on the field. They haven't got the experience that normal juniors and seniors would have gotten with a full season last year. But it's relative. The teams they're playing against are going to be in the same boat. But I think it will cause some disparity. I think some coaches are just naturally better at getting their team ready for action. And so I think we're going to see a little bit of haves and have-nots, which is always the case kind of in high school football. But I think it'll be a little more prevalent this year as the better teams and the better coaches will get their teams more prepared to play.
Giacomo?
Well, again, to your point, I think in a sense, it's a level playing field and that every team is in the same position. You had a really long layoff. Now you have a really quick turnaround. We recently saw this with the NBA basketball season. I mean, I'm not suggesting that it's going to amount to the same amount of injuries and what have you, because to me, injuries can happen, whether it's a short turnaround, a quick turnaround, what have you. But more than anything, these players' body clocks are definitely going to be off. I mean, because you have a quick turnaround. But what I'm interested in seeing are the teams that didn't play any season whatsoever. What are their body clocks going to be off? I mean, because you have some of the smaller schools, like I know a lot of the NCL 1 teams specifically didn't play a lot of games. Who the heck knows where their body clocks are going to be?
Yeah, it makes sense. So now with that, let's dive into some of the non-league games that we're going to see. I would think that pretty much number 1 on everybody's list is the vintage Cardinal Newman game. Obviously Cardinal Newman has a new head coach, but that's a top-notch program. I can offer the Napa side of things. Daniel, Dave, what do you guys know about the Cardinal Newman side of things?
Well, it's going to be really interesting to see where Cardinal Newman's at with the new coach. I've spent quite a bit of time with Coach Sanchez. He's a great guy. He's organized, but he's got to put in a completely new system. They graduated a ton of talent. They only have a couple of returners on offense and defense this year. So he's really got his work cut out for him. And that's a non-league game, so they've got to get ready in a hurry. So I think, the one thing that's going to give some stability to Cardinal Newman is the fact that Pat Peel is still there. He's been the line coach for years. Now he's the defensive coordinator. So I think their defense will be pretty solid. I think as they learn the new system, I got to see them a little bit in passing league, and there's definitely a learning curve. There's different language, slightly different offensive structure, and it's going to take them a while to get going on that. But I think, Coach Sanchez has got a lot of experience, not only at the high school level at St. Augustine of San Diego, but he's also coached at the college level, both on offense and defense, and he knows what it takes to get a team ready. So, I think they're not going to be an explosive team. I think they're going to be more of a grinding team, and they're going to rely on their defense a lot. So that's going to be a tough matchup for them coming right out of the gate. They also play St. Mary's of Stockton at St. Mary's. That'll be a tough game too.
In Vacaville too, correct?
Yeah, they play the Bulldogs. Yep. We'll be live streaming. They have their first 4 games are all at home, and we'll be live streaming those. So I'm looking forward to that.
Daniel, what's your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, it's definitely not as enticing as last year's would have been for me. For multiple standpoints, I think Vintage is still going to be good. I think their line may stack up with anyone outside of the East Bay, especially the North Bay. And then running back, they've got some teams are already I've been talking to just being like, oh God, have to deal with that guy again. Like they are not excited to deal with Smith again. And just anyone you throw in that backfield is a pain. I think especially on the Cardinal Newman front, there's definitely, I think, like Dave said, it's I really don't know what to expect from them. Because since even when I was in high school, Cardinal Newman has always, it's kind of the same thing with Marin Catholic. They always kind of figure it out. There's never really a down year. And this is the first year where you're like, where's the talent? You struggle against St. Vincent's in a 7-on-7. Yeah, it's 7-on-7 passing league, but that's some red flags right off the gate. It's one of those things where, hey, they may eventually figure it out, and I think they probably will. But is that enough for Vintage or a team like St. Mary's Speed to just nip them in the right away? I think potentially, though. Quarterback with Vintage is there's some question marks there.
Yeah. So Vince, obviously Dylan Leach, and you know this program very well over Vintage. What is your expectation for that from that game?
Well, as far as this game, I mean, my take is that this game became a lot more gettable for Vintage, and I felt it was gettable last year, if they played one another, but we're obviously never going to know. But you look at Vintage's non-league schedule. They not only have Cardinal Newman, they have San Ramon, which, as we know, ended their season a couple of years ago. I know it was a couple of years ago, but San Ramon is pretty damn good every single year. And they also have El Cerrito, who Vintage has played a couple of times. They also have Oakland. I don't know anything whatsoever about Oakland, but knowing Coach Leach, I mean, I know, and of course the AD Cam Neal, I think their objective was to load up the non-league schedule. That way they can find out exactly how good they were, because if there was one narrative that Vintage and pretty much every league champion in the state of California had was, well, we know they're good, but we don't know how good they are. But I think specifically the Vintage Cardinal Newman game became more gettable, but to David and Daniel's point, I mean, they seem to find ways to figure it out. But that being said, my hot take of the night is I can definitely see this non-league schedule for Vintage. I can see 3-1. I see 2-2 minimum.
Interesting. So pivoting to another North Bay battle game at the beginning of the season here, Napa versus Windsor. And this one is one where I'm going to go right to Daniel. Obviously, Coach Cronin is over at Windsor now. What do you know about them over there?
So first let's see. Yeah, cool. I do think, counterpointing on that to Vince's thing, I think it's much more likely that Vintage loses to San Ramon Valley than to Newman out of the two. I think the weapons, especially a kid from IMG coming back from Florida, they're going to be pretty damn good over there, especially having the travel. I think I'm scheduled to actually go cover that game. Windsor, Cronin, like that guy can coach. Like I would take him with, like, you give him any roster, that guy's going to figure something out. I think Windsor also inherently has always had a little bit of talent, biased being a Windsor alum. Until my freshman year, every single class, our best athletes always went to Newman. Like universally, that kind of stopped there. And you look, 2012, they won a section title. Correlation there is talent in Windsor. Cronin, and like he knows that. I think they have a decent line. I've heard a couple kids got some really nice beef there, and he's always known to kind of like his offense, but he also wants like perfection a lot of the time. So it's like, how quickly can he get that? Is it a year 2 project where Windsor starts bouncing up? I think Windsor takes care of Napa. Napa has a tight end that's really good. They have a D1, another D1, New Mexico State, Christoph, freak athlete. Who's getting him the ball though? That's my biggest question. I don't really know. What Napa was kind of all over the place last year. They have some decent talent, but I also think they lost a lot of line play last year. So I think Windsor, especially early in the season, has a good chance to pull that one out.
Interesting. So I went out and actually saw Napa High the other day. It looks like it's going to be Anthony Tubridy, who is the starting quarterback for that game and starting quarterback for them this year. So, I think we should pivot elsewhere. What other games in the North Bay, between North Bay teams, should we be looking forward to that are, that aren't on people's radar maybe? Dave, you're kind of the one in charge of all the live streaming of all this stuff. What games are on your radar that you're looking at?
Yeah, well, I think the big game in the North Bay this year that could determine the title will be the Rancho Cotati Windsor game, which is a rematch of last year's game, which was an incredible game. Rancho was off to a 21-0 lead, got up 24-7, eventually lost 28-24, but we're inside the 10-yard line in the last possession of the game. So that's going to be a really good game. Windsor with Cronin, as the coach, with Chase Viemeyer coming back, Micah Johnson, Joey Skinner. I think they're the favorites in the North Bay, without a doubt. But Rancho's going to be good again. Gary Hoteling's a very good coach, and he's got his quarterback coming back, who's a huge kid. He can run and he can throw. He's hard to bring down. So I think that'll be a great game. I think that's kind of the pivotal game that a lot of people are going to be looking at. And I think the X factor really in the North Bay League this year is going to be West County. They got Daniel Bardone coaching again, and then you add the El Molino kids into Annalee, and you really don't know what to expect from that. There's got to be a few kids that are going to help make that a pretty good football team, and they're going to have a chip on their shoulder because everybody's upset about changing the name from Annalee to West County. So I don't know what to expect from them, but somewhere along the line, they could be a factor in the league race at all. But that Rancho Windsor game, without a doubt, is going to be a huge game. And of course, there'll be a lot of interest in the Newman Windsor game just because it's Cronin, coaching against his former team, depending on what, Coach Sanchez can do with the Cardinals this year.
Vince, what games are you looking at here as we head later on into the year in the non-league? I know you've got Ian McMillan making his debut at St. Helena to begin the season.
Kyle, okay, I'm gonna channel my inner Stephen A. Smith. Now, Kyle Foster, let me get this straight. You actually read my mind with the next answer that I was gonna give. Anyhow, Kyle, you actually did read my mind because I followed Coach Ian McMillan's career quite closely from his first stint at St. Helena, which was back in the mid-2000s. He had a couple of stints under Troy Mott. He had a few years at American Canyon, and a long, winding road led him back to St. Helena. Now, Brandon Farrell resigned after 12 years, and he had a very highly successful tenure. But that being said, now St. Helena didn't have a season last year, but talking to St. Helena people that I know, they firmly believe that if they had a season, they would have, had a good chance to, I don't know about win a section title, but make a fairly significant run. Now, Ian, he was the JV coach for the last 3 years. Brandon is coaching the softball team. He has a daughter that plays, and he resigned to, mainly to be a part of, his kids' sports careers, which, hey, I can totally respect 1000%. But anyhow, one thing, and I know, Daniel, you probably know this, having covered Justin-Siena for a number of years, you look at St. Helena's coaching staff, it's a big time Justin-Siena reunion, because you have Ian, you have Rich Catruvo being an assistant, you have Steve Vargas, you have Brendan Shanks. I mean, dear Lord, talk about a reunion. But the reason their opening game at St. Pat's intrigues me is because St. Pat's actually did play a season in the spring, and I believe they went 4-1. So, I mean, I don't know what St. Pat's has coming back. St. Helena, I know, has a team that they feel very, very confident about. So this one's an intriguing one for me, I got to tell you.
So you know.
Oh,
yeah,
Kyle, can I hop in here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, St. Helena is one of the teams I've seen so far this summer, and like always with kind of Justin St. Helena teams, not huge numbers, but they've got a decent amount. They're not going to be struggling there. But I will say, let me make sure I but Ivan Robledo, he's looking big. Like, he was all state as a sophomore. Dude just ate up yardage like no one's business. Like, if he was here all 4 years, he probably has like school records easily. The kid is like, I was just standing next to him and I'm like, this dude's been hit in the weight room. This dude is going to be a monster if they can successfully get him through that line. And they're running the veer, so that's usually easier said than done. And yeah, like you said, that coaching staff, I think that coaching staff probably could coach, like, pick a guy on that staff and they could be a head coach if they wanted to be. But currently they're just like having a good time in St. Helena. And they're also playing Windsor. I think Windsor probably beats them up a little bit, but they're not afraid. They're not scheduling afraid. They're doing that thing where they're going for some of these bigger schools, knowing it's going to be a challenge, but come playoff time, when it's going, instead of Windsor, you're against a Ferndale or you're against a Lower Lake. It's a lot easier and it's a lot smaller competition, and they'll be ready for it. So it's gonna be really interesting to see where they kind of figure it out. A new quarterback, who is their JV quarterback, because he was the JV coach. So a lot of these kids already know him or know the system. It's not like it's a new coach. So I'll be interested to see where they end. I don't have the highest expectations until playoffs.
Great to shout out Ferndale. That's where my family origins are from. But anyway, so there's a program that I'm particularly curious about because I got to see them as the only non-league football game last year, and that is St. Vincent over in Petaluma. That was such a fun game when they faced Justin-Siena last year. Daniel, you were there. What can we expect from that program? Dave, Daniel, what do you guys know about that program? What can we expect from them this year?
Well, I think St. Vincent will be pretty good this year. They've got the running back who's returning. He's a great player. I saw them in the 7-on-7. They can throw the ball a little bit. Numbers is always the problem there, but he's got Trent Herzog's got Marcus Eza helping him on the coaching staff, and he brings a lot of enthusiasm. He was a great player in this area. Also played at Cal. So I think St. Vincent they'll be pretty good for their level of play and for their level of competition for sure.
Daniel?
Yeah. So yeah, especially for me, like when you have Trent Herzog as a head coach, all that guy usually does is win, or he gets kids to college. Those are the two things he always does. Like, especially for like the running back, I think this offense, especially at the lower levels, is this the first year they're into the new NBL, right? Or
well, they would have been last year, but yeah, this is the first year officially. Yeah.
Interesting. So also now when we pivot to the leagues, what league can we say the most wide open? I know the VVAL is not that league. So I just got to say, like, Vintage is my pick to win the league with their hard schedule. But but I do want to point out that Casa may be an underrated program.
I definitely agree.
Let's keep it there then. What do we need to know about Casa Grande from my standpoint? Because I don't know them as well as maybe you or Dave do.
Well, I know they've got a great wide receiver, and I think he's going to make a big difference. He's going to really propel that program. So yeah, they're going to be solid. I think they're going to be a good team. Can they compete with Vintage? Who knows? But I think they'll be in the top 3 or 4 in the Vine Valley for sure.
Daniel?
Yeah, I think they could definitely, like last year was kind of like, hey, if your name's not Vintage, you put your name in a hat and we'll see who wins that week. Really it could be anyone. I think what's really big on their hand is one, they've got a taste in their mouth. I think where it's like that I was at their first game of the season last year where Vintage, I think less than 2 minutes into the game was over. Like they got absolutely hammered. And they were young. They were really, really young. But the thing is, all of them are back. You could definitely say there was something there. It's like, I don't think they may be at Vintage's level. But depending on, of course, injuries or quarterback play for Vintage, like there's potential there. I think they probably slot in second unless they get uprooted by maybe a Petaluma or an AC. Justin's always kind of a flyer in there. I know Justin has a little bit of talent. New quarterback this year.
Yeah.
Much more of a athletic style of quarterback than like a pocket passer that they've had in the past few years. But overall, I think Justin, like how Justin usually kind of works is if they can qualify for playoffs, I think they'll do really well. But I think Casa Grande has a good chance of being that kind of like that team that no one really wants to deal with if your name's not Vintage.
So Vince, I want to pivot this to you since you've seen American Canyon a ton lately. What do you know about them? What do they have coming back? What can we expect from the Wolves?
Well, one thing about American Canyon is that they always have good athletes coming back. So one thing about them, you can definitely never rule them out. I mean, obviously in the early to middle part of the 2010s, they were always a serious player in the league that they were in. I mean, they have potential to be a player in this league, but to your point, Vintage has kind of lapped the field, because like we've talked about before, Vintage under Dylan Leach has become what Napa High was in the old MEL under Troy Mott. But the problem is in this league, there's no Vacaville to push them. So, I mean, again, I keep coming back to the fact that Vintage wins the league, and the race for second place, I think is kind of a dogfight between Casa, between Justin, and American Canyon. At the present time. Now, the reason I don't put Napa in there just yet because I don't know what Napa is just yet. I really don't. So I can't really draw a conclusion. But right now, that's who I like to fight it out for second place. But American Canyon, I think, definitely has the potential to be in that three-way dogfight for second place. And to your point, with Justin-Siena, I think Brandon LaRocco does a fantastic job. It took him a couple of years to grow into his role after Rich was, I guess you could say, forced out. But
it's hard to replace Rich.
Yes, but point being, Daniel, I mean, it took Brandon a couple of years.
I agree.
But I think he's found his footing.
Anyway, why don't we just finish up the VPL here? Daniel, Dave, why don't you kind of let us what to know about Sonoma, Petaluma? I think we hit on Casa already. What do we need to know about those teams?
Especially for like Sonoma and Petaluma, I think I didn't see much last year where I was just like in the future. Sonoma had that bruiser of a large fullback who just was a load to handle. I'm not entirely sure if they've had their new field done yet or where they'll be playing.
Yeah, they do. They do.
That's why they may have an energy where they may be able to do an upset on that first night of a home game in league, get that energy going. And same thing with Petaluma. It was always the thing with Justin-Siena's veer. Like there are sometimes where they were not as good as their opponent, but like if you can't tackle the veer, they're running up 50 points on you. Like. And so especially in a season where everyone's still kind of trying to figure it out, That's definitely something that could happen. Do I think Petaluma is likelier to be at the higher end or the low end? I'd say probably the lower end, but they beat Napa last year, which I wasn't expecting out of nowhere. So I think they're going to be the same kind of upset dog where they're going to pick up a game maybe against a Casa Grande or an American Canyon this year that everyone's like, where did that come from? But that's kind of how the VVAL works.
Dave, what do you know about the teams over there?
I do not know much about Sonoma and Petaluma. You know, I know that they're going to work hard, and I know they'll be, you know, a good matchup when they play each other. Will they be able to compete with some of the top teams in those leagues? Not sure about that, you know, but other teams that I think will be kind of interesting to watch this year will be Montgomery. I know they're working really hard to turn around. They had a great season 2 years ago, and then didn't win a game the next year, so that was disappointing. But I know that Virtus Patton is working really hard. Santa Rosa will be an interesting team to watch. I know they're putting a lot of effort into it. Can they get the kids ready to play and compete? Who knows? So you know, I really, you know, my heart goes out to all those teams that you know, don't get to the playoffs, and I know they set their sights for it, and they work just as hard as everybody else. And I try to give a little bit of love to all those teams as well, because you know, those are the kids that, you know, that need the attention and the encouragement more than some of the top teams that get it every year just because they're always in the top 2 or 3 every year. So yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
looking at Sonoma's schedule, kind of giving it a glance, like they're versus San Rafael, winnable game, versus Weed, winnable game, versus Terra Linda, that's a winnable game, and then they got St. Vincent's and I think St. Vincent's probably has too much athleticism for Sonoma. What was it? They St. Vincent's almost beat Ukiah last year.
And
Same with West County. Like that team, if they put it together, that's a small school that's like, especially come playoff time, is going to be nasty. I could definitely see them being 2-2. That's maybe a little, or 3-1. It's probably a little over, like a little optimistic, but I think if Sonoma has the right kids, they always seem to find 1 or 2 kids that don't end their way up to Justin or Cardinal Newman, and they could have a chance. But I think they're likely is at the bottom of the VVAL. But same thing kind of with Petaluma, but hey, we'll see.
So this next question is a very open-ended question. Obviously, I know the VVAL. You guys choose a league and enlighten me on it, because I really, in the North Bay, like I know we have St. Helena, Calistoga that we could talk about. There's plenty of teams, obviously, in your area, Dave and Daniel. Choose a league and let's enlighten me on it so we can all learn about it here.
Let me pull up some notes, but Dave can go first.
Yeah, North Bay League. I think, you know, you're looking at Windsor, you know, as the favorite, with Rancho, maybe Cardinal Newman, and then, you know, the I don't knows like West County. Who knows? Carrillo. Not really sure too much about what Jay Higgins has coming back this year, but they'll probably win. They always win a couple games that surprise you during the season, and you know, every once in a while they finish a little above, you know, 500. The other North Bay League, the lower league, as we call it, I think St. Vincent, you know, should be competitive in that league with Montgomery. You know, you never really know what's going to happen in that league from year to year, but you know, they've shuffled the deck a little bit, so it might be interesting. It might be kind of a fun league to watch, even though those teams are up against it when it comes playoff time, because they've played against, you know, lower competition. So you know, that's about all I know as far as the North Bay League goes. But I think, you know, Windsor and Rancho are definitely the 2 teams that everybody has on their radar as the favorites this year.
Daniel?
So I'll talk about the Marin League, but I want to do definitely like a shout out. We'll see what happens with them, but the quarterback for Calistoga, I know it's 8-man football. I know it's like that level of football doesn't get like the most shine in the world, but like if Christian Caldera was playing last year, there's a good chance he's like has an argument for the top quarterback to come out of Calistoga. Will he go to a scholarship or thing? No, but like that kid is 3-star at like across the board. I think he did 4 sports his sophomore year. The kid was absolutely ridiculous. Definitely a 1-man show, just absolute monster at the 8-man level. But I'd say the MCAL is for the first time in a while, I wouldn't say up for grabs because Marin Catholic's still the favorite, but there's an unknown because Marin Catholic lost, I think it's like 10 starters on offense, most of the defense. So like Marin Catholic reloads. It's like Carl Newman. They always reload, but this is one of those years where you're like, reload with what? Where San Marin is really confident this year. They've got a running back, named Justin-Siena, who's looking pretty good. He was the top rusher in the MCAL last season. They've got a big beefy line at San Marin, and it's usually Novato's like, hey, whoever gets all the kids. Like 2008, Novato was in the state bowl game. I know that was a long time ago, but there's talent when it doesn't go to Marin Catholic. Novato has talent.
What about a team like Redwood?
Redwood, I've heard they have a good running back this year. I haven't heard much about the line. Like a couple of years back, they had like 3 years in a row, they had D1 linemen each year. I think they have a good chance to get third. Maybe Tam fights them for that. But I think this is not since Justin-Siena beat Marin Catholic 3-0 way back in, I think it was either 2016 or 2014. I think this is the first time in a long time that there's even a chance that Marin Catholic could lose a league game. But if I was to bet money on it, I'm still betting on Marin Catholic.
Makes sense. And to your point real quick, I was able to see Marin Catholic in the 7-on-7 deal versus Justin-Siena in Vintage a few weeks ago. Marin Catholic's legit, so just want to put that out there. Anyway, yeah. Vince, pivoting to you.
Well, I mean, Daniel, you definitely, kind of mentioned a couple of things that hit close to home with me because I had an 11-year association on the Up Valley beat with St. Helena and Calistoga. The interesting thing about Calistoga now, I mean, I can't even begin to break down what I think they might do, but here's one thing that I do know about them is that they've been playing 8-man football since 2015. And it's not because they don't have the numbers to be an 11-man team. It's just that they have the numbers, much like Upper Lake, to be an 11-man team. It's just that the problem with Calistoga is finding an 11-man league with enough competitive equity, because if you put them in the NCL1 with St. Helena and Middletown, I mean, I don't say this to be disparaging, but they would probably be competitive maybe 1 or 2 years out of 10. But, but ever since they've gone the 8-man route, they've been, even with coaching changes, they've been a pretty consistently competitive team. And not knowing much about what they have coming back, I see no reason for that trend, not to continue. But I'll tell you one thing about the NCL1 is that, I mean, Middletown, coached by Bill Fultmer. I mean, that guy has been coaching since Moby Dick was a minnow. And we're talking 1985. I mean, I was in 7th grade. Kyle, you weren't even born. I don't know I don't know how old the other David and Daniel are, but Bill Fultmer, I mean, you talk about a guy that's an institution. And when Ian McMillan first coached at St. Helena, they had some good battles. So the NCL1 intrigues me for that reason, but also the NCL1. Now, I can't begin to break down the league, but, the last time they were playing football, the one thing I can tell you is that this league was, collectively getting better. Because Fort Bragg rises up, Clear Lake on a given year rises up. Lower Lake, I mean, always has good athletes. But like one advantage Fort Bragg has in that league is, I mean, you've got a bus ride that's at least north of 90 minutes, and in some case north of 2 hours. So this is intriguing. Now, I'll tell you one thing. I mean, if this league comes down to St. Helena and Middletown, I mean, they finished the year against each other. So if that game is for who breaks the tie, I mean, that's a potential knockdown, drag out fight. And I got to tell you, that intrigues me. I mean, if we get a normal season, that game is November the 5th. And I'm hoping that we have crisp fall weather, and I hope we get a 21-14 game.
Interesting.
Not 56-41 or something like that.
Interesting. So you brought up the bus ride. Real quick, one non-league game that I want to point out that I don't think we got to is Justin-Siena is visiting Fortuna to begin the season. I don't think Fortuna gets enough credit for being how good they are up in basically in an area where there's not too many people. There's a lot of land, but not many people. They're a top-notch program up there, and I expect that game to be a good game. Daniel, I'm sure you know more about Fortuna than I do, so.
Yeah, for Fortuna, like even on the down year, like I've been trying to get information out of the Humboldt schools, trying to figure out who's the top thing up there ever since St. Bernard's stopped, getting some winks and nudges. There's the type of thing like where kind of like Petaluma, much better, but like on the standpoint of every like 3 years they have like one of those classes where you're like, okay, this is a section winning Fortuna team, but they're always hard nosed. They love the mud. They're gonna hit you in the mouth and they're gonna run the ball. And if you can't stop the run, you ain't stopping Fortuna.
Interesting. So, and this is completely open-ended, but if you have one hot take on the season, you can let it out right now. Vince, I will start with you, Mr. Hot Take Master.
Well, I mean, I haven't thought of any specific hot takes on the season, but here is one hot take that I share with you, Kyle, on the sideline every time we meet, and this is unrelated to high school football. David, Daniel, you guys are going to appreciate this one. Kyle Foster is an insufferable Dallas Cowboy fan. I'm an insufferable Cornhusker fan. We're on the same level. But here's my Stephen A. Smith impersonation that I do with Kyle Foster. Now, Kyle Foster, so let me get this straight. Now, I consider you a great friend. I love you like a brother. And when I say I consider you a friend, I consider you we're in the same vicinity. But Kyle Foster, what the hell are you thinking? Still being a Dallas Cowboy fan. Oh my goodness, what do you think?
The YouTube views just went up when I published this, if people get to this point. Anyway, so Dave, Daniel, we'll end right here with any hot takes you have on anything else you want to let out on just this high school football season returning.
Well, I think the big story is Cronin's at Windsor, and how's that going to pan out and how long is he going to stay there? There's a lot of rumors that he's a one and done at Windsor. So we'll have to see how that all pans out. Windsor Marin Catholic should be an interesting game, non-league game that we haven't talked about also. So yeah, I think that's the big story, that, the fact that he's not at Newman, he's at Windsor, and let the rivalries begin.
Daniel.
Yeah, I don't really think it's the problem is, like, I would have said, like, the hot take is that I don't think Newman will win league this year, but now I don't know if that's really a hot take. I think the expectations for Newman this year are tempered, where everyone's just kind of like, I don't really, Dave could probably say more about what the fan base and what the alumni of Carla Newman are feeling right now. But it's one of those things where, like, if this is the year to pounce on them, this may be the year to pounce on them, but can you turn around a program in 1 year and then instantly make them into a thing? Where I think there's a good chance that Rancho just kind of has been rocking the storm. I think Rancho Cotati could just take that league. There's a good chance. I don't think I guess my hot take was I think San Ramon Valley has a really good chance of kind of having a wake up call. I think the East Bay, like, all these North Bay teams really haven't played the East Bay teams a lot over the last couple of years, and they just play a different style of football. So it's like when you run into a Pittsburgh, like Pittsburgh's on a different level than San Ramon Valley, but when you run into these schools, they just eat you up. And if Vintage can come out of San Ramon Valley with a win, then they are truly legit.
You're not wrong to go with SRV there, by the way, because I chose them as well. Anyway, I think that's the great way to end it. Thank you, gentlemen, for doing this. For Daniel Poulter, for Dave Cox, for Vince Diadamo, we will see you later, and enjoy high school football season.
Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure joining you.
Thanks, guys. See you out there on the field.